1 million more people are renting their home now than they were 6 years ago. And with an average deposit for a first-time buyer of £31,700, who can blame them? What's more, high inflation and low interest rates now mean that the average person will have to wait well into their 30s to be able to save enough to buy their first property. So to try and find out a bit more about modern attitudes towards property, I'm going to hit the streets to get your take on a few renting and buying dilemmas. First up, is renting really just throwing money away?
No, not necessarily. Depends how much money you've got, really, whether you can afford to buy something.
Feels like that, but then it's a lot less hassle as well. When stuff goes wrong, you get to always somebody on tap there to fix it.
I think that it's probably easier to buy your own house, but the problem is it's a bit of a catch-22 because then where do you get the money to buy it?
No, not really. I mean, years ago I could understand the appeal of, investing in sort of bricks and mortar. I think everybody's kind of conditioned to do that from a very young age, that you've got to get something kind of solid. But it does kind of take away a bit of your freedom.
A recent survey by the property website Zoopla showed that renting was actually more expensive than buying in 80% of Britain's 50 biggest towns and cities. But this research was based on a mortgage where you only pay off the interest every month, not the actual debt. And anyway, if interest rates rise, like many expect them to, renting will then definitely be cheaper than buying. It's really just down to your own personal situation. I, like many young people, definitely can't afford a deposit for a place of my own, so I have to rent. But are landlords capitalising on this captive market and treating tenants unfairly?
Sure, some of them do, but some of them don't.
Kind of give and take. I've had some good experiences, I've had some terrible experiences. I've had really long times getting my deposit back because he knows he can keep on to it.
I think it entirely depends on the landlord. You do get some landlords which are like parents, but then you get other landlords that are like, if something's broken they won't fix it and they're just nasty.
As most of the people I've spoken to today said, just as there are good and bad tenants, there are good and bad landlords. But still, rents have risen by 3.9% over the last year and are expected to increase even further over 2011. These rises can broadly be explained by increasing prices and hikes in tax, but obviously the boom in tenant demand is also pushing rates up. So with renting getting pricier by the month, should we all ultimately be aiming to own our own property?
I don't know. In France, places like that, they don't, do they? In France, they're much more up for renting. It's a bit of a social climb thing here. You need to, if you haven't got a house that you own, then you're somehow failing.
I think it's changing. I think maybe back in the day with our parents, it was kind of a very important thing, but because your job's more fluid, you move around more, I think the idea of renting is probably the way of the future.
Especially at a young age, maybe owning your own home is, a little bit ambitious, unless you've got a very good job. But I think if you share a home between a lot of people, it's a lot easier to buy it because you put a lot of money into it, like it's sort of shared. I think that's a lot easier to do it that way rather than just putting all of your money into it to get a few other people to do it too.
I mean, and it's, it's right for some people, but I do think it's kind of ingrained in our culture in a way that, my friends in France, for instance, and Holland, haven't been encouraged to buy in the same way. Renting is quite normal for them.
A new survey by the Building Society Association shows that 95% of us think that people should still aspire to eventually buy their own property. Reasons cited for this continued aspiration include pride, stability and security, and being able to make a place your own. It seems that despite the property bubble and recession, many of us are still fixated on eventually owning our own property. The current financial climate may delay these aspirations, causing a perfectly acceptable and booming rental sector. But for many of us, owning a home is still really where the heart is.